Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into the mind of a poet who didn't just write poems. He basically staged a one-man revolution in literature. His name was William Wordsworth, and he completely rewired our understanding of what poetry is, what it does, and who it's even for.
So let's just start with this question, because it gets right to the very heart of everything. You know that feeling, right? When you're just totally overwhelmed by a moment, a view, an emotion, and you just can't find the words for it. Well, that exact feeling is what William Wordsworth dedicated his entire life to exploring.
And the way he did it was by writing a manifesto. It was called the Preface to Lyrical Ballads. And trust me, this was no simple introduction. It was basically a declaration of war on the entire way poetry had been written for centuries.
So let's set the stage for this literary rebellion, because to really understand just how radical Wordsworth was, you first have to get a picture of the world he was fighting against.
See, back in the 18th century, poetry was all about Neoclassicism. Super intellectual, tons of strict rules, very formal. But then, right at the turn of the century, Lyrical Ballads drops, and its preface basically draws a line in the sand. It's the event that kicks off the entire Romantic era, a total game changer.
So what exactly was this old guard that Wordsworth was taking on? To really feel the shock waves of his revolution, we've got to look at this rigid, brainy world of neoclassical poetry he was so determined to tear down.
And this table just lays it all out, doesn't it? Neoclassicism was all about intellect, reason, and looking back to the classical masters. It was poetry for and about the city's elite. Wordsworth comes along and just flips the whole table. He champions emotion over intellect, freedom over stuffy rules, and he looks for inspiration in nature and the lives of ordinary, everyday people. He wanted to throw out the objective poetry of the mind and bring in the subjective poetry of the heart.
Okay, so once the old rules are out the window, Wordsworth doesn't just suggest a few new ones. No, he proposes a completely new, radical definition for what poetry even is, where it comes from, how it's actually made.
This right here, this one sentence, became the core belief of the entire Romantic movement. But when you really look at it, it sounds like a total contradiction, right? How can something be a spontaneous overflow, but also recollected in tranquility? It sounds impossible.
But here's how he breaks it down, and it's fascinating. He's saying it's not about writing in the heat of the moment. It's a process. So, step 1, you have that big, powerful experience. Step 2, you go home, you calm down, you let time pass. Then step 3, later, when you're in that calm state, the memory of that feeling suddenly comes flooding back. And that's step 4. The calm is gone, the original emotion is back in full force, and it overflows into the poem. It's all about filtering that raw emotion through memory. And you can see this perfectly in his own famous poem, I Wandered Lonely as a Cloud. For most of the poem, he's using the past tense. He's remembering seeing those daffodils. But then, in that final stanza, everything switches to the present. He's lying on his couch, the memory flashes back, and now, in the present moment, his heart dances with the daffodils. He takes us right from the past recollection to that present emotional overflow. It's brilliant.
Okay, so he's redefined poetry. Next up, who gets to be a poet? And in answering this, he just completely democratized a role that for centuries was pretty much reserved for the educated, upper-class elite.
This is such a simple but absolutely revolutionary change in perspective. By asking what instead of who, he's taking the focus off of a person's social status, their fancy education, or who they know. Instead, he's asking about their fundamental human qualities. It's not about your resume anymore, it's about your soul.
And this is his answer. So simple, it's profound. A poet isn't some prophet or a genius living in an ivory tower. A poet is simply a human being talking to other human beings. It immediately puts the poet and the reader on the exact same level.
Now, he does say that poets are a little different. They have, a more lively sensibility, more enthusiasm, what he calls a more comprehensive soul. But, and this is the absolute key, these are differences in degree, not in kind. A poet isn't some different species of person. They feel the exact same things we all do, just maybe a little more intensely. They're just more tuned in.
So, the final piece of the puzzle. If poetry is about real human feelings from a real human being, well then it has to use real human language. This meant getting rid of all the artificial, flowery language that had defined poetry for ages.
And you can really see the difference here, can't you? The neoclassical poets would use this crazy specialized vocabulary. They wouldn't say fish, they'd say the finny tribe. I mean, really. Wordsworth just tossed all that out. He believed that powerful feelings don't need fancy decoration. They need honest, direct language that anyone can connect with.
So let's pull all this together. Why on earth are we talking about these ideas from over 200 years ago? Well, because they might be more important now than ever.
Wordsworth's revolution was just massive. He blew the doors open and made poetry something for everyone, not just a select few. He validated our emotions, arguing that feeling is actually a form of intelligence. Most of all, he insisted that poetry shouldn't be a difficult puzzle you have to solve, but an experience you're meant to feel.
And that leaves us with a pretty big question for our own time. In our world, which is just saturated with corporate jargon, social media spin, and now even AI-generated text, what does it even mean to speak with the real language of men today? What is authentic communication anymore? That's definitely something worth thinking about.